Hi there, I hope you are enjoying the videos. Tell me if you are enjoying the videos or not. Now onto the story from our Nuclear Revenge. I got the call center shut down. You amazing Tom Grace. When I was a freshman in college, I took my first office job working for a large company doing contract work to a partially owned subsidiary in the mobile phone industry. It was the 90s and the world of mobile phones was in its days of every local telco still being separate from the divestiture when they broke up Marvell. You had tons of available companies to choose from instead of the big four and their MVNOs. Coverage maps looked like someone sneezed on them instead of the coverage you had now. There was no data, no text, and 100 voice minutes was enough for most anybody. It was the Wild West in telecom. The job paid well enough and the hours allowed me to go to my classes. The job was fairly easy. We were tasked with activating new accounts. This required us to run credit checks and collect deposits when necessary. In the spring and summer things were relatively calm. The only rule that really upset me was that we were not allowed to read anything outside the company intranet during downtime, and this meant I couldn't knock out coursework. No big. Come November they wanted us to work more and more overtime to ramp up for the upcoming holiday season. This I could not do as I was hanging on balancing a full course load in addition to working the requisite 40 hours. They instituted a demand for at least 10 hours overtime a week. We were a small part of the building as we took up less than half of one of the 4 floors and were the only company there that was not a defense contractor. The contractors were all pretty cool, even if the MPs on floors 3 and 4 were a bit hardest. And they were nice to talk to on breaks. We had no room to expand. The office was also only open from 0800–0200. Because of the demand for overtime they instituted desk sharing, but because they still didn't have enough desks, they couldn't seat everybody. I worked days and they wanted me to stay until 1900. This meant that the person with whom I shared a desk that would normally start at 1300 had no place to sit, and, as they were also expected to work the overtime, that they would show up for 2 hours early and sit in the break room until I left. I couldn't understand why they would pay this guy 2 hours of base pay and 2 hours overtime to sit in the break room and twiddle their thumbs, but they determined that would be better than having me get out on time. Eventually I had to tell them I was quitting since I couldn't do the demanded overtime. I left and figured that was that. They called back 2 days after I left and asked if I would come back to work. I said I would on the condition that I would not be expected to work the OT, and they said we would talk about it when I came back in. I show up and they pulled me aside and said that they still needed me to do the OT. I told him that it was impossible and that there was no point to having asked me back if I had to work it. We were at an impasse, so I quit for the second time within a week. The company started asking for more and more overtime of the remaining employees. A bunch of these folks had families, and it was to their delight that they were then being offered hundreds of dollars in bonuses for breaking certain OT thresholds. Their kids would have the best Christmases of their lives, cars were being paid off early, and down payments for mortgages were racking up. Come January the overtime is gone as there was no need for it. People are settling back into their former routines and payday arrives. From my friends that stayed working there, they said that the envelopes were opened and there were audible gasps coming from across the floor. Paychecks were being issued for $0 to a large number of employees. One got a paycheck for 15 cents. The shock quickly turns to anger and the floor erupts. Management came out and addressed everybody and told him that the bonuses they offered were not approved by the company, and that the money had to be reclaimed. People were expected to work and collect checks for no money until the bonuses they were overpaid were paid back to the company, and that anybody that left would be sued by the company for the outstanding balance. They even told one guy that he was lucky enough to have a job there at all, since they normally only hired people with diplomas, and he was a dropout without a GED. A number of those employees were still friends and relayed all this to me. I had just started a new job working as third-party support for a portion of the company to which I was previously contracted, and did night hours to coincide with my new classes. I asked if they minded if I referred some contacts to them if it would get this resolved, and they said it was fine. I then spoke with a few people that I knew with the defense contractors who were able to refer me to friends they had that worked with the IRS, since they would be very interested. What with it kicking off a new tax year, I explained to the IRS what happened and provided him contact for my friends. 1 month later, after an investigation, the full force of the government came down upon the company. The IRS came in and demanded to speak with everybody that made the decision to withhold pay from employees to rescind the bonuses. It was eventually determined that everybody above a certain level was complicit in the scheme and would be held to account by being forced out and facing potential jail time. The company was informed that all the monies would be repaid to those from whom it was taken. Anybody that quit so they could get a job that would give them a paycheck in the meantime was to be offered their job back, and should they refuse to take it, would be issued full-time back pay from the date of their departure. They also determined that the company would either have to fire all those responsible, or the company would be responsible for penalties that were obscenely high. The company thought they had their ace in the hole when they said that without the managers being allowed to stay on, they would have to close the call center. They were informed that closing it was fine, since the final stipulation was that all employees that were not involved in the scam would either be offered the chance to move to the office they had the county over, or would be offered very generous severance packages. The company opted to move the employees and shut the call center. Plea bargains were made. Everyone but the offenders went home happy. TLDR. I quit a job because I couldn't work overtime and subsequently got the call center shuttered.